A millionaire CEO, was single 30 years, until a waitress collided into his arms and changed everything. Funny how one night can change everything. She didn't mean to fall, just slipped, right there, in the middle of spilled champagne and someone else's anger. He wasn't supposed to care, he never did. 30 years, no distractions, not one woman had made him stop, until her. She had no idea who he was, and that's exactly why he couldn't look away. Sometimes fate doesn't knock, it crashes into you, and when it does, it doesn't ask if you're ready. The wind was colder on the roof than it was on the street, but she stayed anyway. Her shoes pinched her feet, and the hem of her dress was still damp from where the wine had spilled, but she stayed, because sometimes silence is the only thing that doesn't lie to you. Jenna Taylor stood just out of reach of the rooftop lights, her breath rising in front of her in quick, anxious clouds. She had $37 in her purse, a tarnished ring from her mother, no job, and just enough pride to pretend she wasn't about to cry. Inside the rooftop bar, music thumped beneath glass chandeliers. Laughter rose from a table full of executives, but she'd stopped hearing it an hour ago. Right after the wine glass had shattered across the table, soaking the lap of a man in a $1,000 suit. She hadn't spilled it, he had, but that didn't matter. "Get her out of here," someone had shouted. "You're a liability, Jenna," her manager hissed, grabbing her by the elbow. And just like that, 5 years of late shifts, of covering for others, of staying quiet, Rosette. She hadn't said a word, not until the man had slapped her, not until her boss had told her to apologize. That's when she'd looked up and seen him, the man at the far table, glass in hand, watching everything with those steel gray eyes. He hadn't flinched. He hadn't spoken. But when the drunk customer raised his hand again, he moved. 1 step, 2, and then he was there, standing between Jenna and the man who'd hurt her, a quiet force wrapped in a tailored black suit. The rooftop went still. All anyone saw was the man with the money, the man with the power, shielding the girl in the cheap black dress. "You'll want to put your hand down," he said softly, "if you plan on keeping it." The air changed. The drunk man blanched, the manager stumbled over an apology. Jenna just stood there, shaking as if the floor had disappeared from under her. He didn't look at her, not at first, just slipped a silver business card between her fingers and said quietly, "You shouldn't be here." Then he walked away. And Jenna had never felt so exposed. She didn't follow him. She didn't ask who he was. She just stood there, clutching a card that shimmered like it belonged to someone untouchable, someone who didn't speak unless it mattered, someone who had stepped in when no one else had. Now, 10 minutes later, she stood on the edge of the rooftop, the card still in her hand, her breath fogging up the Chicago skyline. Grayson Ward, CEO, Ward Enterprise. It didn't feel real. None of it did. She turned the card over in her hand again, watching the way it caught the light like it had somewhere more important to be. She should have walked home, should have thrown the card away. But instead, she whispered the name under her breath like it meant something. Grayson Ward. The man who hadn't blinked. The man who hadn't looked away when everyone else had. Her fingers curled around the card. She should have thanked him. But what do you say to a man like that? A man who saves you like it's nothing, and then disappears before you can breathe. Across the street, in a car so black it caught no reflections, Grayson watched her from behind the tinted glass. He should have left, but he hadn't. For 30 years, he'd walked through boardrooms and mergers and gala halls without looking back. He didn't make mistakes. He didn't repeat himself. He didn't let anyone close. And yet, tonight, he had moved. For a stranger, a girl with fire in her eyes and wine on her shoes. He'd watched the fear on her face turn to something else, defiance. And something in him had remembered what it felt like to protect something that didn't benefit you. He didn't do that. Not anymore. But he had. He watched her turn the card over once more, then tuck it into her coat pocket like a secret. And for the first time in years, just a little. Jenna didn't know what she would do next. She had no plan, no job, no references. But she had the card. And that card was a door. A door she didn't yet know she would walk through. A door that would lead her straight into a world she didn't belong in, and into the arms of the man who had built it. A man who had sworn he'd never need anyone. A man who didn't know he was already falling. Chapter 1. The name on the card. Jenna never meant to use the card. It sat in her coat pocket for 2 days, pressed against her chest like a heartbeat she couldn't quiet. Every time she passed it, she told herself, it was just a fluke, he didn't mean anything by it. You can't build a future on a moment of pity. But when the job center posted an administrative assistant opening at a downtown firm called Ward Enterprises, she knew. There was no way it was coincidence. The building loomed like something out of a dream, silver glass and silence, all sharp angles and impossible reflections. She'd seen it once from the train window. Now she stood at the entrance, in borrowed heels, a stitched-up blouse, and a coat 2 winters old. The receptionist barely looked up. Name? Jenna Taylor. I was told to come for a general affairs opening. There's a pause. Well, on the schedule. I have this. She offered the card like a relic, half hoping it would disappear in her hand before she could embarrass herself. The receptionist's eyes flicked to the name. And for the first time, she sat up straighter. Moment. The phone clicked, a few muffled words. Then, take the elevator to the 39th floor. Evelyn March will meet you. The door opened before Jenna could change her mind. The 39th floor felt like something out of a corporate movie. Wide open space, echoing floors, too much light. Evelyn March met her at the elevator with an expression that gave away nothing. You came from the downtown bar. Jenna froze. Yeah. We gave you the card? Evelyn stared at her for a long moment, then turned. This way. The HR office was glass-walled, clinical. A stack of files sat on the desk, untouched. Evelyn closed the door behind her and gestured toward the single chair across from hers. I've reviewed your file. Your background isn't extensive, mostly service industry, freelance admin, no degree. I know I'm not qualified. I didn't say that. Jenna went still. Evelyn steepled her fingers. Mr. Ward doesn't hand out his card, ever. If he did it for you, you've either impressed him or disrupted something. Jenna swallowed. I didn't ask for a favor. I don't think you did. Evelyn leaned back. There's a temporary vacancy in general affairs. Coffee machines, printers, repair requests, minor operations. You'd be the youngest there by 10 years, and the least welcome. I'll take it. You haven't heard the pay. Don't care. Evelyn's eyes flicked to the phone on her desk. A red light blinked once. She sighed. Fine. You start tomorrow. 7 a.m., formal attire. Speak less, work more. Don't try to impress anyone. And one more thing. Jenna braced herself. I screw up, Evelyn said, her voice low. He'll know. He sees everything, even when you think he isn't looking. That night, Jenna sat at the bus stop with the sky collapsing around her and a paper folder in her lap. Inside, her new ID, a building map, and a pass card with her name printed clean across the front. Ward Enterprises. Jenna Taylor. She wasn't sure if it was a job or a test. All she knew was this: she was walking through the door. And behind that door was the man she'd accidentally told to step on it. Chapter 2. You ordered the CEO to drive you? Ward Enterprises didn't believe in soft landings. At 7:03 a.m., Jenna stood stiffly behind the general affairs desk, wearing the only button-down shirt she owned. She hadn't slept. She'd pressed her pants with a flat iron. Her shoes were... Carla Mendoza didn't offer a hello. She pointed to a stack of manuals. Eat fast. There's no orientation. This isn't Starbucks. Jenna nodded, even though her cheeks burned. Bathrooms down the hall. Breaks are not real things here. We don't talk to executives. Ever? Carla turned, muttering to another staffer. Don't know why she's even here. Must cry to the right person. Jenna pretended not to hear. But someone else did. The doors to the briefing room opened. Everyone stood. Grayson Ward walked in like he owned the floor. Because he did. Navy suit, pale blue shirt, not a hair out of place. He didn't glance left or right, just walked to the front of the room with the silence of a man who didn't need to explain himself. Jenna's breath caught. It was him. The man from the rooftop. The one she told to turn right after the overpriced cafe. And now he was standing 20 feet from her. The Uber driver was the CEO. He turned. Their eyes met. 1 second, maybe 2. Just long enough for his brow to lift subtle, unreadable. She looked away so fast she almost dropped the stapler. The meeting was a blur. Grayson spoke about restructuring, efficiency, team culture. Jenna didn't hear a word. All she could hear was her own voice from 3 nights ago. Go, 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 step on it. $9 for a croissant and it wasn't even warm. I'm wearing penguin socks. By the time the meeting ended, she was sweating through her blouse. The staff rose to leave, and Jenna tried to melt into the back hallway, head down, invisible. And she nearly made it. Until she heard the voice. Miss Taylor? Her feet stopped moving. The hallway went quiet. She turned. Grayson stood in the doorway, arms crossed, one eyebrow still raised. She stepped forward, every inch of her wanting to disappear. Sir? He didn't smile. Not exactly. But his voice was calm, even. I trust your ride this morning was less eventful than the last one? A few nearby staffers froze mid-step. Jenna's face flushed crimson. I took the bus. A safer choice, he said dryly. No chance of mistaken identity. She opened her mouth to apologize, again, but he cut in first. I did enjoy the commentary, especially about the croissant. Now a full smile ghosted his lips. Just barely. Though for the record, they do warm it if you ask. Jenna blinked. Was he joking? He turned, already done with the exchange. But before vanishing down the hall, nice socks by the way. Back at her desk, Carla slammed a folder down in front of Jenna. I don't care who you know, she said under her breath. In this department, we earn our place. Jenna nodded and said nothing. But inside, she knew something Carla didn't. She hadn't asked for this. She hadn't planned to run into him. But she had. And for some reason she couldn't understand. She remembered everything. Even the socks. The section chief with the sharp smile. By Thursday, Jenna had learned 3 things. The General Affairs Office was where coffee machines went to die. Carla Mendoza didn't give second chances. Grayson Ward didn't just notice people, he remembered them. And Carla had noticed that he remembered Jenna. The resentment showed up fast. At first it was small. A couple glance when Jenna didn't staple the report exactly right. A smirk when she misread the print code. It was to Michael when Jenna tripped on the copier cord. But on Thursday morning, it turned into blood sport. You didn't proofread, Carla said, slamming a printed document on Jenna's desk. Jenna looked at the paper. That wasn't my assignment. Why do you always blame others for your mistakes? Carla's voice was low, sharp. Entitlement doesn't get you far here. Michael shifted at his own desk, clearly uncomfortable but saying nothing. Jenna forced a smile. I'll reprint it. Carla leaned in. Her perfume was sharp, expensive, and suffocating. I don't care how you got this job, people talk. I've seen girls like you come and go. Pretty, plucked out of nowhere, but none of them lasted. Jenna didn't flinch. She'd heard worse. But it still burned. At lunch, the break room was quiet. Jenna sat alone, staring at her half-eaten sandwich. Her name tag itched against her chest like it didn't belong. Michael eventually walked in, cleared his throat. You handled that well. Carla's difficult. Jenna smiled without looking up. You mean she hates me? He hesitated. She hates surprises, and she doesn't like being ignored. That made Jenna pause. Ignored by who? He gave her a look. Come on, we all saw it. The hallway. The socks. Jenna winced. Michael shrugged. The last time the CEO spoke to someone in general affairs was never. By Friday, Carla had a new game. At 4:45 p.m., she dropped 10 stapled packets on Jenna's desk. These need to be retyped. You have until 6. Jenna blinked. That's over 50 pages. I can't. Carla's smile was razor sharp. I suppose you can ask your friend upstairs for help. The jab hit its mark. Jenna didn't reply, just rolled up her sleeves and started typing. By 6:22, her fingers ached and the office was nearly dark. Carla had long since gone. As Jenna reached for the last page, she heard a voice behind her. You missed dinner? Turned. Grayson stood in the doorway, his coat folded over one arm. Sir, she started, but he raised a hand. Don't explain, just answer one thing. She nodded. Was the work worth the humiliation? Jenna blinked. He stepped closer. Not too close, but closer than he'd ever been before. Because someone who endures that much unfairness either needs the job or believes in something more important than pride. I need the job, she whispered, but I don't want to disappear to keep it. Grayson studied her. Then, after a moment, he nodded. You won't. Chapter 4. The USB that could ruin everything. Jenna didn't belong on the 41st floor. That was obvious the moment the elevator doors slid open. Everything here was quieter, sleeker, as if even sound had been taught to whisper. She was only here because of an IT ticket. The copier in the executive lounge jammed, and Carla had smirked as she handed Jenna the request. You want to prove yourself? Start with toner. Jenna didn't argue. She needed this job. Even if the hallway reeked of fear and lemon polish. The lounge was empty. She fixed the printer in under 10 minutes, but as she bent to toss the old cartridge into the trash bag, her foot nudged something under the table. A slim silver USB, unlabeled. Jenna picked it up, turned it over. There was no tag, no ID, just weight and instinct. And she tucked it into her pocket, just until she could figure out where it belonged. The next morning, chaos bloomed like fire. Grayson's assistant was pale. 2 VPs were whispering in the hallway. And Carla? Carla was beaming. Everyone to their desks, now. Olivia sat down, heart hammering. At 10:11, Io and Perler approached with the confidence of a firing squad. You were seen on the executive floor last night. You sent me there. I know. The CEO's flash drive was reported missing. Jenna froze. I didn't. Carla raised a single eyebrow. Of course not. But the camera saw you, not me. Then checked the footage. I didn't take it. Carla leaned in, her voice icy. You know what happens when classified information disappears under a junior staffer's watch? Jenna didn't answer. But in her pocket, her hand closed over the USB, cold, solid, guilty. She didn't go to HR, and she went to the one place no one bothered to look. The janitor's wing. Trash bags are dumped here, Thomas said, lifting a bin. Anything valuable usually ends up in the back bay. Jenna explained, quickly, carefully. He listened. You're saying that little thing might cost you your job? He asked. She nodded. Or more. Thomas sighed. Then let's dig. By noon, she was elbow deep in yesterday's trash. Plastic wrappers, crumpled memos, coffee grounds. Her palms were scratched. Her coat smelled like spoiled cream. But in bag 7, she found the second one. The real USB, still faintly damp, and labeled, Woman Legal Reorg. She held it like it might explode. I think I've been set up, she whispered. Thomas raised an eyebrow. I think someone thinks you. Jenna climbed to the 39th floor with two things in hand, her dignity and the drive. Grayson was in his office, sleeves rolled, phone pressed to his shoulder. He looked up, paused, ended the call. Miss Taylor. She walked forward and held out the USB, the real one. This was in the trash chute. He took it, turned it over once, then looked at her. Where did you find it? Where someone hoped I wouldn't look. He was quiet a moment, studying her. Then, you didn't have to. I know. You're not even supposed to be on that floor. I know. He stood. Carla tried to destroy you. I figured. He looked down at the drive. I don't like when people underestimate me, he said. Then he added, with just the ghost of a smile, but I really hate when they underestimate you. Chapter 5. The girl in the trash room. The trash room was colder than she remembered. Jenna leaned against the cement wall, trying to catch her breath. Her coat was streaked with ash and grime, and blood trickled from a shallow cut on her palm where glass had bitten in during the search. She hadn't cried, not even when her knee slammed into a metal bin, not when Carla accused her in front of the others, not when Michael looked away. But now, alone, her hands trembling and smelling of rust, she felt it coming. The tears, the ache, the question that always followed. Is this worth it? Footsteps echoed, sharp, purposeful. Grayson Ward stepped into the doorway. He didn't speak, just stared at her hair frayed from the wind, cheeks flushed with humiliation and effort, fingers curled around the flash drive like it was life itself. You didn't report it, he said quietly. She shook her head. 'Cause if I'd lost it, she whispered, I'd want someone to give me the chance to find it first. He looked at the gash on her hand. You're bleeding. It's fine. He stepped forward. She flinched, not from him, but from what was now unraveling inside her. Sit down. She hesitated, then obeyed. He crouched, took her hand gently in his. This isn't nothing, he said, pulling a handkerchief from his coat. It's not your job to clean me up, she murmured. Maybe not, he said, but I'm doing it anyway. For 10 minutes, silence stretched between them. Only the soft movement of cloth over skin, only the sound of breath, his steady, hers not. She studied him under the fluorescent flicker. There were lines on his face she hadn't noticed before. A small scar near his temple, a bruise on his knuckle. He noticed her watching. What? You don't seem surprised, she said softly, that someone tried to sabotage me. I'm not. Well, because people attack what they don't understand, he replied. And you, they can't figure you out. And he tied the cloth tightly. I think that scares them. He stood. She did too, slowly, carefully. I'm not your responsibility, she said. You don't have to protect me. His expression didn't change, but his voice did. No, he said, but I want to. Back upstairs, the office was quiet. The night shift hadn't arrived yet. The day had emptied out, and with it, all the noise and accusation. Only 2 people remained in the boardroom. Security. Grayson stepped through the door like a judge. Jenna stood just behind him, hands still wrapped, chin lifted. I reviewed the footage, he said, voice calm but cold. And the logs. You requested the print job. You sent her to the 41st floor. Carla's mouth opened, then shut. The USB, he continued, was found in the back corridor, and the only person who passed through that hallway without authorization was you. Carla paled. I don't need your explanation, he said. Only your badge. The silence was heavy. But Jenna stood taller. Not because she wanted to, but because she could now. Later, as she exited the elevator, Grayson stopped her. You still think you don't belong here? She didn't answer. He took out a new ID badge. It was navy, not gray. Executive clearance. "Welcome to the 41st floor," he said. Chapter 6. She shouldn't be here. She shouldn't be here. Jenna knew it the moment the elevator opened into open sky and black glass. No buttons, no receptionist, just one long hallway with white walls, a single abstract painting, and a silent man beside her with a keycard no one else had. Grayson didn't speak. He just walked. She followed because what else do you do when a man like that turns around and says, "You're not going home like this. Come upstairs." It argued, once, briefly. He hadn't threatened, insisted, or even raised his voice. He just said, "Your hand's bleeding through the wrap, and you look like you haven't eaten in 12 hours. She didn't have the strength to argue again. So she followed. The penthouse wasn't what she expected. It wasn't cold or showy. It was clean, sparse, quiet, black furniture. Cream walls, windows that made the skyline feel like a planet she hadn't earned the right to land on. And a kitchen that smelled faintly of mint tea and lemon oil. "Sit," he said simply, gesturing to a long, modern couch. Jenna obeyed. He moved with quiet purpose, heating soup, laying out gauze, unwrapping the hand she thought she'd hidden well. It wasn't awkward. It was careful. He cleaned the wound in silence. Her eyes darted to a small photo frame on a shelf. It held a newspaper clipping, a much younger Grayson shaking hands with a man in military uniform. The smile he wore was smaller than the one he'd given her in the hallway. "Was that your dad?" I paused. "Still around?" A beat. "No." She swallowed. "I'm sorry." "I'm not." He said it simply, with no malice, like a truth so long buried it had stopped hurting. She shifted, breaking the silence. "I've never been in a place like this." "You mean a penthouse?" "I mean someone's life." That made him pause. He looked up. And for the first time, she saw it. Not the CEO, not the man with the cold stare and sharper suits. Just a man. Tired. Alone. Choosing to let her see him anyway. "We think I don't feel," he said finally, wrapping her hand with fresh gauze, "that I make decisions in boardrooms the same way I do with people. Quiet, sharp, final." Jenna nodded. "Is it true?" "I thought it was. Didn't now." He didn't answer right away. Instead, he picked up a bowl of soup and handed it to her. "Olivia said," he said, "you're shaking." She took it with both hands. Steam rose between them. "I'm sorry about the socks," she murmured suddenly. He chuckled. "Low, unexpected. That's what you're apologizing for? I think I called you an overpriced Uber driver. You also accused my building of extortion-level croissants." Jenna smiled. Soft. "Still think I'm a mistake?" His eyes met hers. Long. Quiet. "Now," he said. And in that word, not rushed, not romantic, something inside her settled. Because, for the first time in years, she believed it. That night, when she left, he didn't follow her to the door. He didn't ask for anything. He just stood at the window as she slipped into the elevator, watching the city and the girl who had somehow become the only thing that didn't feel transactional. And she shouldn't have been there. But now that she had been, he wasn't sure the place would ever feel right without her again. "You're not invisible anymore." The invitation arrived on thick, cream cardstock, too expensive to throw away and too terrifying to accept. Jenna stared at it on her kitchen counter all week. Annual Ward Enterprises Awards Night. Formal attire required. Attendance encouraged. In tiny print. Guest of Mr. Ward. She almost didn't go. She had no dress, no heels that didn't pinch, no idea how to survive 5 minutes in a room where billion-dollar mergers were discussed over hors d'oeuvres. But then, on Friday, a box appeared at her door. No note. Just a navy blue dress. Simple, elegant, exactly her size. and beneath it, the softest pair of shoes. She knew who sent it, and she knew he would say nothing. The Art Institute sparkled like it belonged to another version of Chicago, the one where the wine didn't stain and the forks had more than 2 prongs. Jenna stepped inside, heart pounding under the silk neckline. She didn't recognize anyone, but they all seemed to recognize her. Eyes followed her, whispers traced her footsteps. Is that her? The girl from General Affairs? Why would he bring someone like her? Evelyn March greeted her by the fountain with a half smile. I take it you found the dress. Jenna nodded, voice caught somewhere between thanks and panic. Evelyn leaned in slightly. Hold your chin up. These people don't matter as much as they think. At 8:00 p.m., the lights dimmed. Grayson took the stage. No notes, no teleprompter. Just that stillness he wore like armor. He spoke about the company's growth, their wins, their future. Then he paused. I want to tell you about someone who reminded me what integrity looks like. The room shifted. On this building, we value results, but sometimes we forget to see the person behind them. He looked straight at Jenna. She showed me that courage doesn't always roar. Sometimes it quietly digs through garbage to save what others would have let go. A few people laughed. Most didn't. I brought her here tonight because she belongs here, because she reminded me all of us that who you are matters more than what you do. He stepped back from the microphone. And in that silence, Jenna didn't feel invisible. And she felt seen. After the applause, he found her near the back terrace. She was looking out over the city, arms folded tight. I didn't know you were going to say all that. I didn't plan to. Jenna turned. You said I reminded you. I meant it. Of what? He paused. Then, softly, not all good things are measured by strategy. Her breath caught, that maybe I've been measuring my life with the wrong tools. A breeze swept between them. Not enough to push her forward, but not enough to let her walk away. So she stayed, standing beside him, with nothing between them now but space, and the knowledge that neither of them was invisible anymore. Chapter 8. The Woman Who Made the CEO Laugh. The cafe wasn't on any app. It was a place Grayson had discovered before the world started knowing his name, just a rooftop above a second-hand bookstore where the tables were crooked and the coffee came in chipped mugs. No reservations, no security. Just the kind of place you didn't bring someone unless you meant to let them see you. That morning, he brought Jenna. She didn't ask why. She didn't dress up. She just showed up in a denim jacket and black jeans, wind in her hair, a hesitant smile at the corner of her lips. Most billionaires take girls to sky bars, she said as they reached the stairs. I'm not most billionaires, he replied. They sat under an awning while the city stretched wide and quiet beneath them. For a long time, neither of them said much. He sipped his black coffee, she stirred hers until the foam collapsed. Then she asked, gently, Do you ever get tired of being impressive? That startled him. He looked up. I mean, does it exhaust you? She said. Being sharp, perfect, the man who never cracks. His eyes narrowed, but not with anger, with curiosity. And then, it happened. She raised her eyebrows, added, Or are you just afraid people will find out you can't remember how to fold a fitted sheet? And he laughed. Out loud. A short, quiet, startled sound like something had cracked open by accident and let light in. Jenna blinked. "Are you okay?" Grayson coughed, sipped his coffee, looked away. "I haven't done that in a long time." She smiled. Laughed? Forgot I was supposed to be someone. Ava, the owner, came by with lemon scones. She glanced at Jenna, then at Grayson. "New girl?" she asked, teasing. "I like her better than the ones who used to check their reflections in the spoons." "She's not like them," he said too quickly. Jenna turned to him. I'm not. He hesitated, then met her gaze. You're not afraid of silence. She tilted her head. And you are? His voice lowered. Sometimes silence is the only thing that reminds me I'm alone. The words hung there, suspended in the cool air between them. Jenna reached for her scone, tore it quietly. I get that, she said. Sometimes I talk just to prove I still exist. He studied her. And for the first time, not as a puzzle, not as an interruption to his world, but as a woman. Strong, quiet, terrifyingly real. You don't have to prove anything with me, he said. She looked up. Neither do you. They stayed there for 2 hours. No press, no guards. Just two people who hadn't planned to find comfort in each other, and yet had. And when they stood to leave, he held the door. Not because he had to, but because he wanted to hold something, even if it was just that moment. Chapter 9. The USB was never about the US. The boardroom smelled like glass and paper. 12 men and women sat around a long obsidian table, their suits crisp, their eyes tired. Jenna stood near the far end, her hands clasped, her name not even on the agenda. She wasn't supposed to be here. But Grayson had insisted. This affects you, he said, so you'll be in the room when we settle it. Carla Mendoza sat like she owned the table. Back straight, smile weaponized. Mr. Ward, she said coolly, I believe we've already resolved the USB matter. We haven't, Grayson, without looking up. He tapped a remote. A monitor lit up behind him. Security footage rolled. Jenna watched as her own image appeared, slipping the unlabeled number stood. Grayson turned. Pause. He pointed. Look again. He hit another button. The angle shifted this time from the freight elevator hallway. Air, clear as glass, Carla, dropping a nearly identical USB into the janitor's chute. Gasp. She blanched. That's not. Grayson spoke over her. For certain individuals have worked to discredit an employee with no agenda, no connections, and no history of failure. Why? Silence. He looked straight at her. Because she threatened nothing, except their comfort. Jenna's throat caught. Not with fear, but with the weight of being defended, publicly, powerfully, by the man who once watched the world in silence. Carla stood abruptly. You're making this personal. It is personal, Grayson said, his voice low and level. She was targeted for being different, for not He turned to the board. I'm not asking for your vote. I'm telling you, I'm restructuring general affairs, effective immediately. It called in blink. And Carla, you're done. After the meeting, Jenna stood outside the glass wall, stunned. He approached, his footsteps slow. You didn't have to do that, she said softly. I did, he replied, but because the USB was never about the USB. She looked up. Then what was it about? Grayson's eyes were steady. It was about power, about control, about silencing someone who reminded us what character looks like. And what do I remind you of? There was no pause. Before I forgot who I was. That night, he walked her to the elevator. She stepped in, then turned. What happens now? He smiled, the smallest edge of something soft. Now, he said, you stop being the girl who was almost fired. The woman no one dares underestimate again. Chapter 10. The rain that brought you back. She hadn't meant to run. But after the boardroom, the elevator, the words, she couldn't breathe. Grayson's defense had been too much, too public, too personal. So she typed the resignation, folded it with shaking hands, and left it with the doorman. No words, just an envelope. Because how do you leave someone who's never asked you to stay? Rain swept sideways across the street, like the city itself was trying to push her back. She pulled her coat tighter and stepped into it anyway. She didn't cry. not until she saw the black car idling by the curb. Its door was open, and he was standing beside it, drenched. No umbrella. Just there. Wait. Jenna froze. Grayson didn't gesture. He just looked at her like the world had narrowed to one shape, one voice, one set of eyes he never wanted to look away from again. And she walked to him slowly. The rain plastered her hair to her neck. Water slid down his collar, but neither of them moved. Finally, she whispered, "Why are you here?" His voice was quiet, raw. "Because I knew you'd try to disappear. I left the letter." "I didn't read it." "Why not?" "Because I'd rather hear it from you," he said. "If you're going to leave, look me in the eye." She swallowed. Hard. "I thought maybe you defended me because you felt sorry for me." He blinked. Then I realized I was scared it might be more than that. Grayson's jaw tightened. "Jenna." She took a breath, rain streaking her face like tears. "I didn't know someone could make me feel safe and seen at the same time. It's terrifying." He stepped closer. "I'm terrified too." She laughed, breath catching. You're a storm in a suit. You don't get scared." He looked at her then, not like a CEO, not like a savior, but like a man. "Every day," he said, "since you walked into that bar." He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small. The business card. Soggy, creased. "You never called," he said, offering it. She took it from his hand, fingers brushing. "I kept it." "That's not the same thing." "I lied," she said. "It's not." And she stepped forward, close enough to hear his breath hitch. "Neither is this." And then she kissed him. Not like the movies, no spinning lights, no music swell. Just the kind of kiss you give when you've held too much back for too long. Soft, brave, absolutely real. When they pulled apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "You're leaving," he murmured. She nodded. "More pretending you don't care." A smile ghosted her lips. "Not more overpriced croissants." He laughed. And this time, so did she. It started with a card she wasn't supposed to keep. A man she wasn't supposed to meet. And a job she was never supposed to get. But here they were, 1 year later, standing in a rooftop garden he'd built for her. For them. Because sometimes second chances aren't loud. Sometimes they grow in the cracks left by everything you thought was broken. Jenna wore a navy dress. No label, no price tag, just something that felt like hers. Grayson stood beside her in shirt sleeves, no tie. The city lights blinked below, and above them, silence stretched like peace. "This place used to mean control," he said, nodding toward the building. "What does it mean now?" she asked. He smiled. "Still control, but now shared." They didn't have a public engagement, no announcement, no press release. Just a garden bench, a simple ring, and the moment she looked at him and said, "I've always belonged somewhere. I just didn't know it could be beside you." And when he replied, "You never needed me to be whole, but I've never been more myself than when I'm with you." And she knew, this wasn't a love born from rescue. It was born from recognition. She didn't stop working. She didn't become Mrs. Ward on the stationery. But every morning she poured him coffee, because she wanted to. And every night he asked her how her day was, because now he understood that listening was its own kind of love. So she'd almost walked away. From him. From this. Because somewhere in her bones she'd been taught that people like her didn't end up with people like him. But Grayson had changed the story. He hadn't rewritten her. He'd just made room for her name at the top of the page. And this time, it wasn't in ink. It was in gold. Real love doesn't ask you to shrink. It doesn't rescue you like a hero. It stands beside you in silence, in rain, in the middle of every storm and says, you never had to prove anything to be loved. You just had to stay. If you've ever felt invisible, if you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever stood in the rain wondering if anyone would choose you, then maybe this story found you for a reason. Because your name matters. And somewhere out there, someone is already looking for it, even if they don't know it yet. Tell us in the comments. What moment in this story made you feel seen? We're listening, always.